When we think, all right, it's time to get healthier, I'm ready to change my habits, I'm ready to feel and look my best, we often think of calorie counting as the solution to that. And while calorie counting can be really helpful in the beginning, and for some people who are really numbers focused, it's not for everyone. Especially for those who have a past history of disordered eating, it can really cause us to fixate on numbers, obsessing over every little morsel versus looking at nutrition as the big picture and looking at, are we actually eating healthy? So what's the solution, Katie, if I can't calorie count or if it's not that good for me? What do I do? Well, today I'm really excited to talk to you guys about my personal favorite tweak that you can make to your healthy eating plan to help you stay in line with your healthy eating goals without needing to calorie count at all. I promise if you watch until the end of this video, you are gonna know tangible ways about how to practice a more mindful and intuitive approach without feeling like you're totally lost in the sauce. I know that is a very, very common criticism and challenge that I hear from my own personal clients of doing mindful and intuitive eating is they feel like it's just the hunger fullness diet, or like they really don't have any tangible steps to be more mindful. They know what mindfulness is and they know they want to get there, but they don't really know how to bridge the gap between where they're at now and being a natural, healthy, intentional, mindful eater. This video is sponsored by the See How You Eat app, but more on that later. Okay, so in today's video, we're gonna talk about the 4 steps or the 4 different ways that you can transition from calorie counting to mindful eating while still eating a healthy and intentional diet. Step number 1 is to regularly check in with your appetite. You may feel like you already naturally do this, but trust me, most people actually don't. Or they make the mistake of only really paying attention to their hunger signals when it's tapping them on the shoulder or when it's hitting them across the head with a brick because it's so intense. Yes, that happens to me sometimes, especially during pregnancy. Listen, you don't want to wait until hunger has a hold on you before you actually address it. When we wait until we're a 9 or maybe even a 10 on the hunger scale, we're no longer using our logical brain to make healthy food decisions. That is totally out the window now. We're using our primal brain, which our primal brain's #1 goal and objective is not necessarily eating a healthy and balanced diet, but it's just to get as much calories, carbs, and fat in our body as possible because that's what we are primarily designed to crave in times of famine. So this is not to cause any fear or shame around the feeling of hunger. Hunger is a totally natural thing. And when you, again, wait until it's too late, it's natural to crave foods that are high in calories, carbs, and fat. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We want that for our bodies in case we were in an extreme scenario of starvation. However, chances are if you're watching this video, you're probably not in that scenario being chased by a tiger, trying to find your own berries in the woods. So what are some tangible ways to avoid getting to a 9 or a 10 every time we're faced with meal or snack time? Here's what you want to do. If you are brand new to assessing hunger and fullness signals, aka you haven't done it in several months, I usually like to do this practice every couple of months when I start to feel like I'm a little out of whack and not really listening to my hunger fullness signals adequately anymore. So this is a practice that you're not just going to do one time in your life and you're good to go, you're a mindful eater forever. It's something that you have to practice again and again on a regular schedule to really stay in tune with your body. And for 1 to 3 days out of this week, I challenge you to assess your hunger every 2 hours. Now, this is gonna seem really, really tedious and really daunting and kind of unnatural, and that's okay. We are only doing it for, again, 1 to 3 days out of this week, every 2 to 3 months, so we can stay really aligned with our hunger. And after doing this practice several times, even just a couple days this week, I think you'll really find that it starts to come more naturally, and that even on the days where you're not tracking your hunger anymore, you're gonna naturally start to think, am I hungry? How hungry am I on a scale of 1 to 10? every couple of hours. It'll just be one of those things that's background noise. It's subconscious versus conscious. And this is just a way that we can kind of naturally train that muscle in your brain to pay attention before it's to the point of you being extremely ravenously hungry to where you're eating all the chips and all the ice cream in your freezer. And step number 2, or tip number 2, whatever you want to call it, is pay attention to where your mind is at while you are eating. I feel like I said that weird. Pay attention to where your mind is at while you're eating. Had that vocal fry. It may sound really weird, but where your mind is at really matters in your healthy habits. Sometimes we can unknowingly eat while distracted, which can cause us to eat more than we normally would if we weren't distracted. It can even mess with our fullness signals from said meal or snack. So at our next meal, we don't realize that we even had a snack just an hour or two before, or we don't realize how full that meal made us because we weren't really processing it with our mind and our body. And listen, I'm not just making this up. Paying attention and being aware of when you're eating actually makes it so your body senses that you are fuller. It's an actual thing, I promise. Another thing that can interfere with normal eating patterns is emotional eating. This is when we are not eating because of actual physical hunger, but because we are trying to soothe or maybe even numb an emotion. People often like to blame a lack of knowledge on why we eat certain ways, but I find that a lot more often than anything else, it's something deeper like emotional eating or distracted eating that really gets in the way. And if we do this every single day to soothe that emotion, we can start to develop a bad habit of using food instead of other things like actually addressing our emotions to help us feel better. Instead of food, you may be looking for more social interaction, more love and affection or attention. And maybe you just want to cure boredom, and so food is going to fill the gap of time that you have that you feel bored. And the simple but not so easy to actually implement sometimes solution is to address the underlying emotions that you are feeling. If you are feeling bored, call a friend. If you are craving social interaction, take your laptop to a coffee shop instead of working from home. I know that I need to do that more often, and that would definitely help me socially and mentally. So I'm actually addressing the underlying challenges that I face from day to day. And if you're seeking more love, affection, attention, or something else going on in your social relationships, in your friendships, or your personal significant other relationships, make sure that you communicate. Trust me, I'm not a therapist, and I know it is so much easier said than done, but communication is really key and something that I think all of us have really had challenges with, especially since 2020. I know I have, with just communicating our thoughts and feelings openly without, feeling like we have to bottle it all up. I don't know about you, but I'm a bottler sometimes. Another thing that I want to lump in with emotional eating before we wrap up this step and move on to the next one is self-judgment around foods. You've probably heard this quote before: forbidden fruit always tastes the sweetest. So the more we try to demonize a food like a carbohydrate or a dessert, the more often we're actually thinking about that food. Also, I have the pink elephant example. It's often used in psychology when we're thinking about anxiety and stuff like that. And it goes like this: don't think about a pink elephant, or don't think about anxiety, don't think about chocolate cake. That often leads us to think about it more because we're trying not to think about it. So it's really not productive to say what not to have. What I really love to recommend, and I talk about it in a lot of my other videos too, is focus on what you can have more of in a healthy diet, not what you can have less of. All right, before we get into the next 2 steps/tips on how you can eat more mindfully and intentionally without having to calorie or macro count, I want to hear from you. Let me know if you have any reoccurring criticisms or self-judgments around any particular foods or category of foods, or maybe it's when you go out to eat or go to a friend's birthday party and enjoy a slice of cake, something like that. Tell me where those self-defeating thoughts thoughts really come up for you. And if you are interested in diving deeper with me, make sure after this video to check the description below, because I have some free resources, including my mindful eating masterclass for beginners on how you can start eating more mindfully today. It's a 40-minute lesson. You're really gonna love it, and I think you're gonna learn a lot, and you'll also get $100 off my mindful eating course as well. If you want to go even deeper with me in the Mindful Muscles Academy, you do have access to me on a private Facebook group and our community members as well to ask questions, check in, and just let us know how you're doing in the program. So I think you're really going to love it, and definitely make sure to check that out and consider joining. All right, step number 3 to eating a healthy and intentional diet without actually calorie or macro counting is photo food logging. Now, before you get really skeptical with me and say, hey, Katie, isn't this another way to just log your foods and obsess about your foods? Let me tell you my spiel and then you can judge it. All right, so I know a lot of you that are interested in mindful eating also crave a little bit of structure. And this is what I really struggled with after I healed from my eating disorder and had years and years of learning my own natural healthy balance. I felt like there were times where I needed a little more structure and I didn't have that. And I've seen this in so many clients of mine as well. So enter photo food logging. And photo food logging is exactly how it sounds. You open up an app and you go in and you have 6 little squares that you can click on, and it lets you snap a photo of your meal or your snack and also type some notes out if you would like to. Like if you accidentally forget to take a picture of your meal, you can just type it out in word form, which is really nice because I forget quite a bit. And this is a great way to mindfully be aware of what you ate during the day, so you don't have that food amnesia and forget everything that you had more than 2 hours ago, like I often do. You can stay aware of your choices and intentional without crunching numbers. And this helps you focus on your nutrient density in your diet, which is really what a healthy diet and nutrition means, right? Instead of just focusing on, okay, how many calories did I have? Because calories are a unit of measurement that we use to assess how much energy we're getting from food, but it doesn't really give us the entire picture. It doesn't tell us what vitamins and minerals we're getting from the food. It doesn't really say a whole lot about the macronutrients of the food, and it doesn't say whether or not the food is processed, hyper-processed, or a whole food like a fruit or a veggie. So it really doesn't help to hyperfixate, in my opinion, on calories alone. And for those of you who might be worrying if photo food logging is just another form of trying to micromanage your food, I totally understand. And disclaimer, it might not be for every single person out there, but what I find is really helpful is to be flexible with it. So usually when we're like on MyFitnessPal or something like that, we're like, okay, we have to have every single day logged or else we're a total failure and we're a liar if we log everything but our dinner because our calories are now not accurate. Like it's like this idea that you have to be perfect with it. But with photo food logging, I like to take a very easy approach with it and say, okay, for me personally, I feel like I have kind of gotten a feel for my nutrition after years and also being a dietitian, so take that into account. So I only use it when I need it or when I feel like my nutrition is kind of off, and I'll do it for 1 to 3 days out of the week until I feel like I'm hitting my norm again. And you can do the exact same if you're worried about overdoing it or you're worried about potentially triggering some unhealthy thoughts. And side note, if you ever feel triggered by any app, always discontinue to use it. It's not worth it. Okay, so what app allows you to do this, you might ask? My personal favorite app, and this has been my personal favorite app for years and years and years, far before this sponsorship, is the See How You Eat app. And when you open the app, it's super duper simple and seamless, and that's what I really love about it. And you'll see 6 squares. So typically if you eat in a traditional kind of pattern, it would be 3 meals and 3 snacks. And I think that you can change the number within the app if you so choose, or you can just, if you only eat 5 meals a day, only log those 5 meals. totally fine. They also have a notes part of the app, which is really cool. So if at the end of the day you want to reflect individually on that day, how things went, maybe you kind of felt a little bloated after lunch and you're not sure why. And every single day you had quinoa at lunch. You can maybe make a note that quinoa seems to upset your stomach, or maybe you need to cook it a little longer so it digests a little bit better. These are the types of things that I would be paying attention to if I were brand new to mindful eating, and or I'm simply trying to get a better gauge of how I can make small and healthy tweaks into my diet. And that hunger and fullness scale that we talked about, the notes part of this app can be a great way to track your hunger and fullness, so it's all in one concise spot. In the app, you also have the ability to track your water intake, any emotions that are coming up throughout the day, how you're feeling, and also your activity. You can plan ahead your meals within the app, so if you already have a photo, maybe it's from a food blog or something like that, that you plan to eat later on the day and you just kind of want to plan it out ahead of time so you can follow your meal plan, you can easily upload a photo that way as well. And another perk that I really love is that you can export your meal data, so your pictures and all the meals that you had within the week, to your dietitian, or you can print it out for your own self-reflection. And I think that's such a cool addition that many people neglect to use or neglect to even realize is there within the app. If you are interested in checking out the See How You Eat app, then check the description below. I will have a super limited time offer for an extended free trial of the See How You Eat app, so you can use it and test it out and see if it's right for you. Details are in the description box and you can click the link and try it out today. All right, and step number 4, which we kind of brushed on just a little bit, I got a little ahead of myself, is to use mindful logging to make adjustments accordingly. Make adjustments, go get energized. So when you start using the See How You Eat app, I want this to be more than just another tool to check off the list. Another thing to do that's kind of a drag to just improve your health. Boo, so boring. I want it to be something that you use to actually reshape your diet. And this is something that I do a lot with my clients. So if you don't feel comfortable doing it on your own, definitely check out, I have a couple one-on-one coaching spots myself, or check out a dietitian in your area and see if they can work with you to help you reflect. Because sometimes it's like, okay, I know, easy for me to say, right? As a dietitian, I have a lot of ideas of how you can tweak diets based on how this or that is going. So it's easy for me to say. So if you feel like you can't do it alone, totally fine, get a dietitian. If you feel, however, that you can do this on your own, I think it's a great tool to just journal and self-reflect on and say, what is going well for me in my diet? What am I proud of this week that I did? Did I eat a lot of fruits or veggies? Or did I have a lot of whole grains instead of just having my regular white bread? It's really, really important to not just focus on the negatives and what you're doing wrong, but also what you're doing right. Positive psychology, like we said. But also on the opposite end of the spectrum, not just what you were doing positively, but what could you tweak? What's not going so well? Maybe you didn't have your veggie intake for the week, or maybe you didn't really have a ton of protein and that left you feeling pretty hungry at the end of most days. Or maybe you ate out like 5 or 6 times that week and you want to reduce that number. From there, what's 1 or 2 realistic changes or tweaks that you can make in the next week? And when I say realistic, I don't mean if you're eating 6 times out a week that you eat out 0 times the next week. What I'm saying is if you're having 6 meals out and that's your goal, is to eat out less, start with 3 or 4 times a week instead of 6. Don't just go from 0 to 100 and then feel like a failure when inevitably it's really hard to make that big giant leap. Start small and realistic and really get specific with your goal. And also don't make it too many goals to where you're so overwhelmed that you don't even remember what your goals were the next week. And I would also really break it down from a day-to-day perspective and a week-to-week perspective. So don't just get hyper fixated on one day that you didn't do so well. Look at the week from a holistic perspective. All right, if you want to dive even deeper into this topic, I think you're going to love my Mindful Eating for Beginners Masterclass. It's totally free and it's in the description box below, and you will get access to that right away in your inbox. Just make sure you check your junk folder and all that fun stuff if you don't see it come in right away. But let me know in the comment section below what's one way you're going to tweak your diet this week in a realistic, sustainable, and healthy way. I want to hear from you. And if you want to continue hanging out here on the channel, then click or tap the screen to head on over to the next video. Bye, guys.